everybody. Welcome back to Earth and Star Spiritual Wellness Center. Today, I have a very special guest. Her name is Brooke Sullivan, and she's going to be talking a little bit about practical mysticism, apprenticeship, Dharma igniting. I believe we're going to talk about that just because I have questions about that. Tantra, herbs, yoga, name it. And this woman knows some crazy stuff about it, honestly. Hey, Brooke, how are you?
Oh, I'm so good, Mary. Hi. Yeah, so I run a school called the Wild Temple, and I have an apprenticeship that comes up every fall called the Sage Apprenticeship. And we usually start around the full or the new moons after what is called Pitru Paksha. So it's a deep dive into lineage and land healing in the Vedic calendar. And so that's called Bone Deep. I actually start newbies with me in that course, and it starts the full moon September 6th. And then after that, we have the Sage Apprenticeship. So that's the deep dive into Dharma. And it's where I ignite your Dharma.
Well, we need to talk about these things. So thewildtemple.com, and you guys can find our link in the description as well. But this apprenticeship, the first one you were talking about, the Bone Deep. So that one is about lineage and land healing, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Turning to our bloodlines and noticing what are the blessings, what are the burdens, right? And really enhancing the blessings, and then maybe what's not so helpful, how we can mitigate, how we can lessen those.
How do those fall in line? Because the ancestry is so important. You know, we do, I believe, get to pick our ancestry before we incarnate, because it's going to help us with the lessons that we get to learn and the things that we need to break. When we get so many gifts from healing, you know, and we get so many gifts just passed down through ancestry because they've already done things so that they could give us these gifts as we're born. So we're born with ancestral gifts. How does that play into land healing in this specific scenario?
Oh, that's such a good question. I would say because we are so intimately intertwined with our place, right, with the environment that we live in. We were just hopping in saying, ooh, we live in moist areas, so it affects my throat when I talk, for example. Wherever you live, whether it's more desert climate, Mediterranean, whether it's moist Scottish, UK kind of area, that land informs how you live your life. So you may be a little more indoors, or maybe you are more out of doors. And then what happens in each place, like historically, there are ghosts, you know. We have my husband calls it also in a very funny way, like when you have experience after experience, you kind of have your ghosts are there, right? These memories are there. But we also very literally have our people's experiences and memories in certain places, as well as where they were buried or cremated. Their bones then become the soil of the land, and then that has this kind of energy of your people in this place. And so I like to think of the power of place being something that can inform my joy or my healing or my education. And so I'll sit outside and I'll be with the rivers of, say, where we're living now, which is the unceded lands of the Cherokee. And I love to learn about what's and what has happened on these lands, both as blessing and burden, to then inform me how I can show up best in life. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. That was kind of
love it. No, I love it. I've never actually thought about it quite that way, where the land directly reflects to you the history of your lineage and ancestry. And I think sometimes that's why we're guided to go on pilgrimages where our ancestors have been before, or where we want to do the 23andMe and, you know, find out where we're from and track it all the way back and maybe go to some of those places, or why we're even inherently drawn to certain places. I remember being 4 years old and loving the bagpipes. And it was the most irritating thing ever for my family members because they hated it. But for me, I was like, I love it. And I loved plaid. I would wear plaid pants all through high school. I wore plaid pants. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I realized that I can track my ancestry back through, or, you know, one half of my ancestry back through Wales, Scotland, Ireland, Norway, all the way back to the free states of the Baltics. So there's correlations that as a child I was picking up on without even knowing that that was the family history.
Oh, I love that you even just brought up those lands. So I have led retreats to Ireland for many years, and I just got back last week from Scotland, where I led a retreat with a bunch of Scottish women. And my intention, well, first of all, you said sometimes we're drawn to certain areas or certain like styles without even realizing why. And I'm right there with you. I wore Argyle socks like my whole life. That was my my thing. Um, but when I went to Ireland for the first time, it was kind of out of a fluke. We were on our honeyversary, my husband and I, and we were just chasing the sun. And for some reason, Ireland was a sunny place in Europe. So we were like, okay, let's go hop over there. But what I found listening to the land, and this is kind of how I term it now, just by being outside and being present, what I started to feel in my body was woe, a lot of woe. And it was mainly in my like reproductive organs and in my, what I felt to be my more feminine nature of caring, nurturance. It just felt like that was severed. It felt like there was a slice through it. And then I found myself deepening my experience on the land. In that time, we wound up going to where there were scars of the potato famine, and then it hits you so hard. Like it's not in a textbook. This was real. And I wound up leading retreats there year after year. I did 5 retreats before my dad started to do the ancestry. And he was like, Brooke, just so you have, so many of your ancestors are from Ireland. You should do a DNA test. And so I did. And out of the entire area where I'd been leading retreats was exactly where my ancestors were from. So this, and then coming into Scotland, what I realized from the people and from this power of place over and over again, I was learning what resiliency means, and resiliency from really, really tough struggles, from being severed from your land, your language, your ability to practice in a way that you would like to practice, right? Without it being you're put in jail, or, you're taken away from your family. And so your history, my history, our inheritance has been that kind of severance. So I feel now my mission in life is to heal that severance and to heal the disconnect between land and my nature and Mother Nature. And I notice that with a lot of people I work with.
That's beautiful. And it also adds a mission to your life personally.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this because this isn't just this grand mission, like I have to heal all of Ireland. What it looks like is a personal mission to heal that space and how it connects to your personal lineage, which makes it very focused and purposeful.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where the Dharma ignition comes in, because I'm
That's where I was rolling.
Yeah, yeah. So Dharma in its largest sense, and I'm not sure if you can hear my wild kitty in the background, but she wants to play with me. Dharma in a very large sense means sacred law. It's like following the rhythms and the cycles and the seasons and being connected to like natural law. And adharmic living is being out of sync, or even out of that beautiful connection to the earth, for example. When we bring it onto a personal level, it's being in sync with your authentic nature and your authentic self and holding true to your values. And so what we often find as an inheritance is we've lost connection to the who we are, and we've been conditioned, maybe it's by our education or where we find ourselves in peer groups, whatever it may be. We often get pulled out of our center into paths and purposes that don't necessarily fit for us. And so many people, and I've seen this, I grew up with this, many people live a life of being unhappy because they're not living their true to their nature and true to their skills and talents. And so what I've found as like a superpower is I can just talk with someone, and within 5 minutes, I'm pretty clear as to who they are and what they are, kind of what their superpowers are and what they're good at. And I can also feel pretty quickly, and it might take a day or 3, where they have masks on, that they're not living authentically. And so that's where I've kind of honed in on this skill to bring it into apprenticeship form, in supporting people to come back into their center. And I do it lovingly. I'm not like, hey, I see your mask, let's like berate you. I don't do that at all. It's more like, hey, how would it feel to maybe play music more or to dance more, and to recognize that being like a caregiver for children is actually part of your dharma. Like you are good at that. And so that feels to me, people really light up. And when you light up, you're like, you're on it. And that's an ignition. That's or we're on fire.
I love that. Well, guys, if you guys want someone more gentle, then go to Brooke, honestly. When you said I'm not mean about it, I'm like, because I will I'm not mean though, but like I will tell my clients, that is not real for you anymore. I don't know why you're pretending that you still want to be doing this when you're not. So stop it, cut it out. So I'm more mean, I think, but it's just an awareness type thing. So how do you figure out what's in alignment with your Dharma? Because I know that there are dharmic laws that kind of apply to every human in this space, but then you also have like your personal journey.
Yeah, in the Vedic tradition, there are actually 4 ways that are like your markers, and I love them because they feel true. And I'm a big fan of, I'll learn the information, but if it doesn't work, then I just don't worry about it. But if it resonates and my body is like, hell yes, then I'm on it. So this is a big hell yes. This is a path of the soul where our ability to feel complete and utter joy in life, and like you're accomplished and that you're on fire, essentially, has 4 desired paths. And one is that you are supported. And this can mean financially. It could mean just you have the house, the car, the right people around you. That support is key for dharmic living. And then the second is beauty and pleasure and joy. Because when we are, we know when you have all the things, but maybe there is no joy about it, or you don't have friendship that really fills your heart, or you're just doing the grind of this awesome job and you're CEO, but you don't have any time to enjoy your swimming pool or the vacations, right? So joy and beauty is needed. So that's support, pleasure. And then the third one is Dharma. So this is actually your purpose and path. And it's important to each human to actually feel accomplished. And so when you're working that 9-to-5 job and you realize there is nothing that is filling you around this, it's just feeling like it's a paycheck, it's survival, but you have all of these skills and talents that you're not using. Even if maybe you're a lawyer again, or a vet technician, or whatever it might be, but you're not feeling accomplished by this, then that's going to be like a whoa. But if you step into that, that's the third path to dharmic living. And then the fourth is freedom. So when you are nailing all of these other ones and you're feeling like, oh, I can breathe out because life is amazing, those are markers for the soul for dharmic living. And any one of them can kind of create that whoa, but most people have most of them out of alignment. And so it's really like, let's just work with one at a time. And so like an onion peel, you look at what's up for you. If you're really struggling to get your website up and you want to make a dent as a business coach, but you are not having, maybe you don't have support with your 3-year-old, and you can never rely on your car, it's always breaking down, like that survival mode, that support needs to be met first, right? And then the other things kind of fall into place. But it's also a dance where you can just kind of tend to each one like a little gardener.
I love that. This feels really important.
Yeah.
Really important, because one, you're kind of touching on the hierarchy of needs. You cannot really grow that much spiritually or otherwise if you're living in that fight or flight or freeze all of the time. Like if you're surviving, it's hard to think about outside of that. But we try, as like we work around that as well. And I love these 4 things. They just feel really, really important. So if one of them is off, how do we activate that? Or is this what you do in the Sage apprenticeship?
Yeah, this is what we do. And I mean, I guess It's not a one size fits all approach. It's more formulaic. But I would say, and I can probably feel you would resonate with this, part of how we can address each one of these is actually to get present with what is, and whatever practices get you there. Maybe for some it's a walking meditation, because like you said, your nervous system maybe is a little more active and it's hard for you to sit still. But if you walk, all of a sudden the mind clears. And if you're focusing on what brings me pleasure, because I haven't felt pleasure in a long time, then those ahas start to come in. And then you can implement that. Well, maybe playing my clarinet at 7 p.m. tonight instead of turning on the TV could actually shift something slightly. And then you get a taste of that joy or pleasure. And the next day you feel different. And so maybe again, you're on that walk and you realize, well, that was amazing. How do I feel different? And I have more capacity. I have more patience. I have a little more inspiration now to add on something else. So it starts to catch, and it's like you for you, where I'm a big fan of not necessarily needing to go outside of ourselves always for the solutions, to have the guidance, to have the support, right? So and I doubt you're mean. I think like maybe you're crisp with your um, your directives, but you say it with a smile and like you are sunshine radiance. So I doubt anyone's like, oh, you hurt me to the core. But right, so when we have the right team around us to support us, whether it's a teacher, a wellness practitioner, a therapist, a good buddy, we can use and work with their advice, but ultimately it's us for us, right? And so when we are focusing on whether it's support, pleasure, path, or freedom, the idea is to get present with what is and to wake up what I call your inner sage, right? This is why I call my apprenticeship the Sage Apprenticeship. So the more we start to listen to that voice of conscience and reason, the more that strengthens, and the self-sabotage thoughts of you're not good enough, you suck, you can't do this, start to lessen, because you're actualizing these things that are really just bite-sized pieces.
That the mindset is what's coming in, because I've noticed that also with people sometimes, is that you can sometimes easily see, or they might even easily know what needs to change. Oh, I hate my job. I just am miserable in my life. Like, people sometimes know these things about themselves, but then they have a mindset of not knowing how to change it, get out of it. They feel trapped or helpless inside of their situations. So I feel confident that you have those tools that you can help show people how they can do that for themselves. And you did give some good examples, like these meditations or breathing exercises where you can clear your mind and think outside of the box, not getting yourself stuck in those mindsets. How long does it take how long is your program, your Sage apprenticeship?
Yeah, well, we have it's 1 year now, and it used to be that I fitted into what's called the Yoga Alliance National Registry or International Registry, by modules. But what I've found is and I really felt this land when I've moved to different houses. Do you feel like, I don't know, maybe you resonate with this, but when you come into a new place, it takes you 4 seasons to really kind of get in there, like to know where your spices go in your cabinets and how the furniture is truly set up with the different lighting and the different times of year. It's the same thing with, I think, this realigning to your own nature, is to feel it in all 4 seasons. And so the apprenticeship runs year long, but I often have people that are like, oh my gosh, this was amazing, I want to do it again. And so they're in second, third year. And I wanted to say something about what you just said about the presence. Maybe it'll come back. Yeah.
About the mindset?
Yeah, it was about the mindset. I don't know. It'll come back.
Do you have to do the Sage apprenticeship after you do the bone? Was it Bone Deep?
Well, no, you don't at all. So the Sage apprenticeship is coming in. I do love for people to love yoga. And if you don't love the yoga asana, right, the postures, that's fine. Yoga is more than just the postures. It's meditation. It's living in accordance with the seasons, also known as its sister science, Ayurveda. So technically, I really love for people to have a love for that. And this Bone Deep course is actually included in the apprenticeship. So it's a bonus. If you sign up, you get that. And you get a fall cleanse, which is really nice. But if you're new to my work in the Wild Temple, it's just a nice way to get in to see if we even jive, if we resonate with the same language, and how these kinds of teachings can support you. And this particular one, I share the stage with a woman named Kane, and Kane is an ancestor, she is of the lineage of the Gullah Geechee tribe in South Carolina Islands. And it's beautiful how we bring together the Vedic and her elemental wisdom from these native soils of America. And what she brings in is the ancestral wisdom of the elements, like how water is our ancestor, earth is our ancestor. And I really love that. And I'm a big fan too of the psychology of ancestral healing and land lineage. So we go into the psychology of that. But then when you start to look at, say, your people, and you're coming from Wales or Scotland or maybe some other area in the world, Central America, what plant allies did your family work with? And so the plants then, and the birds, and the species around you also become your ancestors. And so we can learn from them. Yeah, I kind of went back on the tangent of the land and lineage, but
I was riding the wave, because before you even brought it up, I was like looking, because I'm like connecting and riding your waves. And I was like, I see flowers everywhere around you. They were just blooming out of your chest. And I was just watching. So I figured we'd end up on the herbs at some point too. But there's another wave coming up through this. One is the herbs, something about those flowers, and it feels very in flow. The other thing that's coming up through this is something about inherent gifts. And it might be coming from the lineage and the ancestry. It might be coming through the Dharmic talks. But there's something about, I just see this white light, and it feels like the purity of who we were born to be and what we already have inside of us at birth, and the guidance that is already set in place to keep us in alignment with those gifts and those purposes, and it's like something is flowing in about how our personal inherent ethics, because some people are naturally, I think, more inclined to explore and to discover and to push boundaries than other people. And I don't know where this is coming from. It's all just kind of flowing in. So see how you feel about it. But it just feels like there's little things in place for certain people, for everybody, but certain things in place for everybody that keep people naturally on their dharmic path. So what takes us off of that? Is it just like what we talked about with the mindset, with wounds or traumas or things like that can kind of just pull us off of that dharmic path? And maybe we're not always on it, but that's what it looks like. It feels like to me we're just born with that, and guardrails in place around it.
That was such a big, juicy question.
Sorry.
And actually, it reminded me of what I wanted to answer before that kind of fell out of my brain. But what I think you started to ask, and I'm going to go back to this because I think it actually leads us into this next question. And you asked me pretty much like, how long does it take to work with me for things to work, is kind of what I heard. And I'll give you an example. When I was in Scotland just last week, I wound up working with someone only because they were my hosts. So one of the women on the retreat, it was a yoga ritual retreat in Argyll. She invited me to stay in Edinburgh the night before I had to hop the plane. So I was like, oh, that's amazing. I don't have to get a hotel room. So I was able to meet her husband, who is in quite a state. And I think from listening to him, he's been in that state for years now. And it was so lovely. He made me dinner, and we talked about really kind of he started to go into his origin of woe, like what's going on for him. And I don't know, people just naturally do that with me. I think I just hold nice space, and I'm a good ear. And so he went back to 26 years old, where he lost his mother. His mother had a heart disease. All growing up was the family protecting the mother and bringing her to London so that she could get her surgeries. And will she make it through the night? Will she make it through this next surgery? So that was his upbringing. And finally, before she passed away, she said, you need to go travel. You need to go be you. So he did. And he found himself finally free and joyful for the first time, went traveling. And then while he was overseas, she passed away. So he is carrying this guilt and this burden, and he went into a very dark night of the soul. And then when he came out of it, it was in the form of super control. So, like a noose on his life. He doesn't allow himself to drink. He doesn't allow himself to eat past 5. He gets up early in the, it's just this crazy control, or he feels he's going to break. And watching him talk, he couldn't look me in the eyes. He was all over the place, apologizing for himself for maybe burning the food or doing, ADHD out the wazoo. And what I noticed and what I know is that his nervous system was completely activated and he was in a sympathetic overdrive, like light switch on vibe. And so I asked him, would you be comfortable with me sharing with you a practice? And he was like, oh my gosh, please. And I got him into something called crocodile pose. And it's just laying on your belly, stack the arms, and you breathe the belly into the floor. So you inhale, you push the belly into the floor, and you exhale, release it. And he was so funny. He was so cute. He was like, okay, I'm going to go lay on the floor. But, he was shy. He was like, should I shut the door so you don't look at me? He's like, oh, wait a minute. This is your profession. You're a yoga teacher. So, he's like big burly dude. And so he got, and I was like, it's fine. We'll shut the door so you can have your privacy in your crocodile pose. So I checked on him within 3 minutes, and he was just like, it was like somebody had just given him like a sedative. He looked up and he was like, oh, what's happening? This is amazing. Can I just be here for a little longer? I was like, okay. So that happened. And then the next morning before I left, before I hopped the plane, so it's like 5:30 a.m., I asked him if he wanted me to give him a meditation to add on to that. Mm-hmm. So the result was this man has now figured out how to turn his light switch on and off. And it was life-changing within moments. So it doesn't take a full year, but it's these tools that when you recognize where someone's at, that helps them come back into their alignment. And it could be the result of this, is to answer your second question, where and what and how are things pulling us out of our alignment, out of our integrity, even out of our dharma. And it could be trauma. It could be just conditioning, right? It could be we're pushing ourselves to be in this rat race that the world is requiring of us. And we are not programmed for that. We are not wired for that. Our creature bodies are like, slow down. I can't take anymore, So what yogic tools do, and this is where the Sage Apprenticeship is really, a full treasure chest of, and it's not just poses, for example, it's like, breathing exercises, it's mindfulness exercises. They bring you out of that fight or flight or freeze. They help rewrite the story of maybe that critical mom that was like, you're never good. You're never going to be good enough. You're never going to be strong enough. You're never going to be beautiful enough, right? So we have these aspects that can then recreate that narrative. And what I do personally as an herbalist is I've always brought the plants in with these teachings of yoga and meditation and living in accordance with the season, and this kind of woven tapestry for that unique individual kind of, I want to say, cuts to the bone. It gets right into the jugular of change. And so we don't need to be staying in this weird, like icky habit pattern for months and decades. We can just overnight change it.
Bone deep change.
There it is. Yes.
Well, tell me about the plants that you use. In one of our last discussions, you mentioned that you do a lot with tantric herbs, but this sounds like you just do a lot of herbs in general. Like this is one of your things.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. So, that's such a great question. I would say as When I first started the healing path, it was in midwifery school, and the the slogan was bring birth back to the family, and our education was around empowering families and empowering individuals, and specifically empowering mothers to be the caretakers of the family. And one of the things that we immediately dove into was getting out into nature and learning about the plants. So it was largely in Appalachia, what's growing outside. And a lot of what's growing outside are our weeds: burdock, yellow dock, dandelion. And I would say the huge shift that I had in learning about these plants was that I had health at my fingertips. I had the ability now to not go into these patterns of dysfunction, that I had to go see a doctor, because a lot of the things that we go to see a doctor for can actually be prevented or even stopped just by healthy eating habits and working with our weeds and our herbs. And so that would be the first level of tantra. So tantra is a science of empowerment. It's also a science of studying energy and how the subtle energy moves us and moves us into these directions of integral living in accordance with your true authentic nature, and living in a way that you're tending to nature. And the word tantra, and well, I'll say the word tantra has been completely adulterated and extracted and appropriated to mean neo-tantra, which is all about sex, or in the East, it's like a black magic. And it's really neither, although, I mean, sure, when you have a whole life science, it's going to, maybe there's this and that can be a part of it. But if you were to boil it down, I love looking at the essence of things. And this is where my, that other uh, deep study when I started midwifery was actually in energy, so the subtleties of things. So I think you're also a devotee of subtle energies, but this ability to recognize that we need less when it's the right thing to really get us in tune with life. And tantra is just like this mother teacher of this. It's look a little bit deeper into what it is that you're hungry for, what it is that you're desiring. And I think, like, if you look at America, for example, right now, especially America, but definitely other countries, we have this adulterated view of sex and of sexuality, or it's distorted because it's been so shamed, and it's been so from the Puritan days of the original colonies, right? It's been looked down upon as this body is um, not a sanctuary, not something to be felt as pleasurable and sensual, but instead it's to be ignored. And it's to, let's like operate from our head centers now and like ignore this body. And what Tantra is saying is, actually, these senses, our sight, hearing, touching, tasting, feeling, bring us into our inherent joy and pleasure, which, remember, is a soul desire. And not only is it necessary for a fulfilling life, but it's actually the way in to a real beautiful, deep, magical life. And I think if you look at how society has programmed us to be these machines, these worker bees, right, for the government, for whomever is in charge, right, the powers that be, there's been this narrative of let's continue to smother those senses down for putting on the altar instead, like the intellect, right, academia first, be yeah, head forward motion, right, moving through life instead of feeling and slowing down and embodying life. And this is, going so far as to commodify or suppress the female body and everything woman and everything feminine, including our planet. And so, that is the old narrative. And what's so beautiful about Tantra as a life science is It's a mother tradition. It's a feminine tradition that doesn't discount the divine masculine. It's like, yay, we are here together. We are doing this together. Even your masculine side is so important, right alongside your nurturance and caring. We have to be strong, fierce, radiant, have boundaries, right? As equally as, being touched, to be moved, to feel with our hearts. And I think to go back to your question on integrity and even purity, right? We have, and I know I did this when I first had my child, was I all of a sudden, and I first started to study yoga, I went into this swing, this pendulum swing of everything needed to be pristine, pure, angelic, Virgin Mary style, And what happened was I was really living from my belly up, right? I was actually not embodied in my body. And so Tantra invites us to get into the grit, to get into our shadows, to get into what could be seen as like the soil or the dirt, right? But that's good. It's healthy, because then when we look to that, especially again, if we go back to like that, what's been buried under the rug as our sexual impulses, when we actually turn to them as, that's a natural human need to connect in this way, then it's not the monster under the rug. It doesn't start to fester like that gnarly wound, right? It's actually seen and loved for what it is. And then you can act on it. Oh, well, my need for pleasure is actually to connect to someone and to love in this way that bodies are touching. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're actually designed for that. But it's the old narrative that's saying, hey, that's not okay. So then these monsters all of a sudden, awaken from that. So my part of my work is kind of to teach and to reclaim this language, even this word of tantra, because we're getting into not the superficial sexual neo-tantra, but the very deep, true, integrous, pure desire of the soul to be touched. Yeah, that's the essence.
That was beautiful and huge and impactful. What I heard at one point was that purity has different definitions. And one definition of purity is untouched, which might actually even be a Webster dictionary type of definition if my mind's serving, untouched, untainted. But what I heard you say through Tantra is that purity is pleasure and joy. Something about health was there. Is health the first part of Tantra? Is that what you were saying? You said there are three parts.
Yeah, I love that you asked that. I feel that, yes, health is wholeness. Health is deep nurturance. And this is why having embodied wisdom or body wisdom at the forefront is like tilling the soil of the garden. If you don't have that, how do you expect to get more subtle or deeper into your storylines so you can shift them, right? Because you're still just, my belly aches. I have a migraine, right? We have to actually have the body be healthy first, or continue to go back to it and nurture body. Don't forget the body as you're on your spiritual path or your healing journey.
What about the people who, and I'm just doing this to be inclusive because I've had comments in the past. What about the people who aren't active sexually, not because they're suppressed, but because they choose not to, or it's just not an option for them at this time in their life right now? How can they still tap into that pleasure chakra, that part of their lives, to manifest health and to do this practice?
Oh, I love that question. I actually just saw it was on Instagram. It's a New York Times article actually, and it's latest New York Times article, and it's about this community of women that have decided to retire together with no men on the property. Like, it's not no men are allowed in their lives, but it's like they have a home. You go to their home, keep the community all women. And I was like, whew, that's cool and brazen. And I looked a little more deeply into that. And one of the quotes that they extracted from one of the women was, I'm 67. I've had all the best sex that this life will entail. That was right, her approach. And so it just made me think like, yeah, there are so many times in our lives, I think even stages in our lives that people don't talk about, where you just don't want to have sex.
Mhm.
But we are still wired for pleasure. And
Mm.
I think that's the key, where I think that even that word pleasure, people think is like it's sexual. I find myself, so I teach at Asheville Yoga Center. I think that's how you found me. It's just a little Wednesday drop-in class, and I drop that pleasure word in all the time, and just to see how people react. And I can see some people like, "Ooh, she said that," And I think that we need to clear that up. I think that we need to clear that up. It feels like there's some dust bunnies on this word pleasure, and we are wired for pleasure. Our entire body has like erectile tissue, even in our armpits, right?
I did not know that.
Which is so interesting, right? So we are totally, however you believe you were created, whatever, if it's love, if it's God, goddess, pure consciousness, divine creator, whatever it may be, we are given these really cool body experiences, right? And in Tantra, this is the altar. It's like, don't ignore this. We actually have this living vessel that is quite a mystery. And especially now, because we've inherited from belly up or head or neck up this lifestyle and this narrative that we're ignoring all this. I think it's a ploy. I think it's like a way to keep us subjugated. I think you turn towards your body, you're like, oh shit, now I'm empowered, because pleasure is life force.
Mhm.
Pleasure is the nature of creation. If you look at the birds and the bees, if you look at the flowers, botany is sex, right? So even if you're not having sexual intercourse with someone, that's only like 1/10 of it anyway. We are naturally wired to take a walk and feel the breeze. And oh my gosh, maybe all of a sudden your body is electric. And you're like, oh, hello, life. I feel pleasure from my head to my toes. And it may be because you're playing hooky and you weren't working that day. And, and that little excitement. And then you get that extra breeze, that kind of aliveness. Or we're recording this in the summertime. You go out and I was just on the lake. I've just been camping. I just feel so alive. And it was raining and it's muddy and, but then the waters and then the breeze, there is so much pleasure. And it is sensual, very similar to sexual pleasure when you are that alive. And I think that is what we're going for when we're actually wanting to connect to someone, is that aliveness.
Mm.
And that, because of, again, our distorted narrative, it's all about that end goal. It's all about the orgasm, the ejaculation, right? But what about all the foreplay? What about all that leading up? It's super pleasurable. And again, we don't need another person for that at all. And we don't need to have any shame around if we don't want to have actual sex with someone. I think that needs to also be flicked out of the narrative. Asexual, binary, non-binary, whether you are polyamorous, whether you have a monogamous relationship, whether you are on, what do they call it? A sabbatical from sex for a year.
Abstinence.
Thank you. I think it's all beautiful. And I do feel that with that in mind, bring pleasure into your life. Like, what are other ways that you can experience pleasure? And honestly, that would be an amazing, like, educational experience if just like a group of people were to study how to feel pleasure to its utmost without sex.
I
And
love
do that,
all of that.
right?
Yeah. I mean, well, I think about this often sometimes because I have Libra is my Venus is in Libra. So there's like a balance to it, but like Libra is also a lot about like beauty. And you really kind of tucked beauty in there with that pleasure and that joy.
Yeah.
And so I notice that when I'm with people, especially romantic relationships, I'm all about the romance, but I don't really care much about the end goal, which is sex. Whereas men, they care about that end goal and not so much about the foreplay and the connection and the romance parts. And really, I could live my life mostly, not Ollie, but like I really majority want to live my life in the romance places, the beauty, the sensuality, the pleasure, the experiences. And I'm a very touchy person as well. I like to hug, I like to cuddle. I just feel like I connect in those ways with people when I can feel. And it's a sensuality, not a sexuality, but it's the same energy in the body that comes up for creation manifestation. And the first, I've been doing Pilates since I was very young, but I think the real first like yoga class that I went to when they had us pop into Happy Baby, I was like, whoa, my badge is out. Because that pose like really pulls things open. And it was definitely like a looking around, like, is everyone else doing this too? Should I wear different pants next time? And I've really learned through going more to yoga rather than Pilates, which is an exercise class, and yoga is more about the energy. I've learned through going through more yoga classes how the openness, the sensuality, and the movements and the stretches, even the little pains, not big pains, but stretching to your max and opening and that movement, it's sensual and it's pleasurable, and it is that energy. So
Yeah.
I love this about this talk. Is there anything else? I think we hit on some amazing points. I really enjoyed our talk. Is there anything else that you want people to know about you, about what you offer? Anything else that is just coming up that you feel like you want to touch on?
Yeah, Mary, I think we did so much. Thank you. And even for that, I think the what you just said about sexuality and sensuality, I maybe just as a takeaway to use your senses more. When we actually bring in sight, hearing, touch, tasting, all of the senses, it brings us like they are, I think we are divinely orchestrated to uh, have our senses be gateways into the now, into a present feeling state that can be a touchstone to everything else that you do. And so if you are in any moment then noticing, okay, what am I hearing? How am I hearing? Am I hearing it with annoyance? That leaf blower, damn it, that leaf blower, right? Or what am I seeing? What am I touching? Instead of always just being in the mind, to drop in, I think right there, that is like a ritual embodiment where you can start to reclaim your body and come back home to yourself in a way that is rebellious. Because I think we need a rebellion right now of embodied wisdom to claim our ground, to claim our, our temple space in a way that we can rewrite the narratives that are being instilled upon us, to be empowered in a world that feels really disempowering, to feel whole in a world that feels very fragmenting, to understand our sage within in a time where we're in an intellectual overload and we don't even know where the source information is coming from. We can really rely on our senses and we can really rely on our bodies. And the more that we do it in little increments, the more we start to trust our body's wisdom. And then that sage wisdom wakes up a little more and gets stronger. And then the more we can trust ourselves even more. Because I think that's part of the old narrative, is that we can't trust ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a crime. That's a crime against our wisdom. We can trust ourselves. We've just been told that we're not good enough and that we're not worthy to, or we're not the right sex, or we're not strong enough. And I call BS, right? So yeah, so that's what I would say. I'd say work with maybe myself or Mary, and we'll help get you into your sensual being, your sensual nature, back into your alignment, to really live more fully in this world and to do this thing, right? We have this one beautiful life. Yeah.
I want to drop this last little nugget in here, and I'm not going to super go into it or explain it. What I heard when you're telling everyone to get into their senses, and I know that's a completely, that goes in line with everything we were talking about. When you're really in your senses physically, you are also strengthening your shadow senses, which are your clairs. So the more that you get into your body and embody this wisdom, the more you're getting in touch with your feminine intuition and your self-trust. And they work together in this way. So you are becoming more of what you were born to be. You're becoming more in touch with your clear abilities. And these are the things that help us navigate our dharmic path. That was just the last little message that came in, and I felt like it needed to be heard. Thank you so much, Brooke, for being with us today. I really enjoyed it, and I hope we get to do it again sometime.
Me too, Mary. Thank you so much. Thanks for holding this space and for your community.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.